Welcome, and welcome back to Paws. Today we're going to be building for the Pallas cat. Now, apologies to those of you that wanted to see the Siberian tiger. Don't worry, that's coming in the next episode. But as of today, the Zookeeper's pack has dropped. So let's jump on in and start this Pallas cat habitat. What is up, everybody? My name is Blob, and welcome back to Paws. And that's right, we are building for the Pallas cat now. Really excited about this. I had an idea of what I wanted to do for them when they were announced and teased, so I was really excited to just jump straight into this. And yeah, so in the background you can see me doing it's going to be like a big mesh cage basically. Now, I know a massive thank you to Goron. I was looking at the space that I had to work with for this Pallas cat, and it was sort of an area that I didn't really know what I was going to do with until they were announced. But when I saw the area that I had to work with and knew I wanted to do something mesh related, I knew that Goron had done a tutorial based on this. So went and checked that video out. Really learned a lot from watching it. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. But I soon realized on his workshop he had a roof, a complete roof. So I thought to myself, do you know what? I know it seems lazy, but up to this point I've only used about 3 blueprints in this whole sanctuary. You've got like lion signs, you've got Dommel's tower, Nausicaa's statue. There's probably one more that I'm probably missing, but I really have used a minimal amount of blueprints in this place. So I thought, let's use a 4th. Let's use it for something that's going to save me an awful lot of time, but I'm still going to have to do a lot of the legwork. So massive thank you to Goron for his pre-made mesh roof. And it seemed like fate, because when I ended up placing it down, it fit perfectly. It really did fit perfectly. So yeah, huge shout out to Goron for doing a lot of the legwork and putting me through the mental torture of having to work with the mesh in this game. Now, you've seen me go around the whole perimeter of the whole thing. It looks really good, I think, at this point. Cannot complain. But then the next step was to go around and lower each of the poles or posts to the level where the mesh came down to. Now, because this is obviously like not your conventional mesh, it's not like a greenhouse type shape, square shaped. This required a lot of patience to do. But I think free build made this a little bit easier to do. So just going around lowering each one, and one of these panels that I've made, I know for a fact I'm going to be taking out and turning into a glass panel, so that definitely doesn't stay. But once I've gone around and load all of the poles to the correct height, then came the most tedious part of the whole process, and that was going to each of the areas, and where the mesh was overhanging, I quintessentially had to redo the mesh to make it meet where I'd leveled the fence off to finish. So here you can see it's like overhanging by a little bit, and then I'm just going through adjusting where I can, deleting pieces of mesh, replacing it with smaller pieces of mesh, lining it all back up again to get it where I want it to. And this really was the most torturous part of the whole process, but after it's all done, I am so happy with how it looks and wouldn't change it for the world. It was horrible to do, but at the same time it's sort of risk reward, you know. And another thing to note is that it's not completely perfect. You know, if you really did zoom up close, you would see little gaps here and there. But quintessentially, when you're down at ground level, who's going to be seeing this stuff? You know, I think the jankiness of it sells the whole illusion that I was trying to go for. At the end of the day, it's just like a mesh cage. No one's going to be looking at the intricacies of this. But yeah, so the plan is that this is going to be the first upload on the release date of the DLC, and then I'm actually planning to get the Siberian tiger to you pretty much right away. I realized that I've done this episode and the Pallas cat has actually jumped the queue. The next animal was supposed to be the Siberian tiger, but I think what I've been doing is to try and get the sanctuary done as quick as possible without rushing anything. I've done half the Siberian tiger habitat, I've done the Pallas cat habitat, and I've made a start to the African leopard habitat as well. And I'm recording this voiceover portion the day before the DLC releases. So I've really tried to get ahead where I can, because then it means I can then spend the next 2 weeks getting I've got Sparrow doing something for me for the sanctuary. Massive shout out to her. I've got a few detailing bits to do at the rear end of the sanctuary. I still need to do the reception area as well. I still need to go back and redo the signage, because obviously the new cats need their own signage, but it also means I then have to update the animal list one that you might have seen before. That one needs updating because I need to add the new ones to it as well, and then redo the QR codes and re-upload it. And there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be done behind the scenes that you guys might not particularly see, but I'm hoping to have the sanctuary done. If I can get it done by the end of the month, I'll be quite happy to be totally honest with you. But I'll obviously be releasing like a teaser trailer for when the tour is going to be coming, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Now don't worry, I'm not going to sit and make you watch me arduously fight with that mesh for the next 30 minutes. So I then, as soon as that was done, I jumped into the foliage. The mesh cage on its own did look very obscure, so I think the next thing always for me when I'm working with something like this is to make it look in keeping with the rest of the area. You've got the jaguars opposite, you've got the Siberian tigers that are going to be residing behind us, you've got the big staff area that we worked on ages ago now behind this. So it's all about, we're getting to that point now where it's about tying all of these areas together so that they don't look too disjointed. I think the heavy use of foliage that I've already used around the sanctuary and the styles all really lends itself beautifully to this all looking like one cohesive park, and couldn't be happy with it. But it's the usual stuff from me: creosote bushes, yew trees, the yellow creosote bushes as well. I end up throwing a load of nettles in here and buffalo grass, usual stuff. But I was a little bit worried at one point that the rear side of this sanctuary was looking a bit more claustrophobic compared to the entrance area. But I thought to myself, I think you do need some differences. As much as I want everything to be cohesive and blend together, I don't think that necessarily has to be a trend that follows from every single section of the zoo. I think what keeps this zoo from being, or what keeps this zoo cohesive and one project, is things like the signage. The signage is consistent throughout and it's the same sort of style. The pathing is the same sort of style of pathing, and it has the same sort of elements in terms of the changes in elevation. You know, the foliage palette is pretty much the same. You know, I've differed here and there where there might be like a tropical cat or something that resides in a different area. So in the snow leopard habitat, we've obviously got some pine trees, but obviously they're not situated anywhere else within the sanctuary. They're just sort of there for theming, as it were. And while I say that, the rocks that you see me placing in the background are very much the same story. You know, I'm using a mix between the natural rocks and the faux rocks, but at the end of the day, the thing that changes is the color of the rocks to fit the areas that they might reside in. So the rock work in its style is the same, but the coloration is different. But I think those subtle differences are what make it feel like you're visiting different unique areas of the sanctuary rather than just having a bit of deja vu, as it were. Speaking of deja vu, here you see me using these temple pieces again that I've coloured the same colour as the rocks. I absolutely love these. I think, especially in an area like this where the Pallas cat resides, they're normally in sort of like mountainous areas, as it were. So I think having these craggy rocks are really something that helps you sell the illusion that you're not in the mountains, but you're maybe at the foot of a mountain. So really glad with how they look as well. I didn't start clearing an area at the back as well because I want to have a small indoor area. I'm going to tell you now, I've downloaded Planet Zoo Plus, and that's because I can't tolerate the massive hitboxes that animals need in order to be able to get into indoor areas. I just want something small, and the tiger one, it was making me angry the other day, so I just thought to myself, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to get Planet Zoo Plus. I'm not using it for like the space requirement side of things. I'm purely using it for the fact that animals are actually going to be able to get through realistic spaces rather than me struggle. And it's actually going to benefit me a little bit down the line, I think, when I come to do the African leopard, but without spoiling anything too much. But a lot of the theming I'm doing here with the rocks and the trees are sort of alluding to the idea that you're at a foot of a mountain, so you've got this like climbing rock bit here that goes along the back. I'm trying to minimize, if you were actually to open this zoo up to guests, I'm trying to minimize the amount that they'll be stopping. I did recently open the zoo up to guests and they were stopping in some of the most outrageous places, so I just closed the zoo again. But obviously if you were to open this up and you want to have people walking around just for like a little bit of more immersion, I'm trying to mitigate as much of that stopping as much as I can, really. I then jump to the other side, and this is where the Pallas cats are going to be climbing up in order to be able to get to their indoor area. This does get a little bit of a rejig because it is a bit on the larger side, but yeah, so this area here really people should be walking to. So what I might end up doing is just placing some concrete panels down and then just putting some staff paths so that they don't come back here anyway, because beyond this point really you're only going to have the indoor area for the Pallas cat, but you can't see inside there anyway, and then you've got the big staff area behind that anyway, so there's not really any reason for guests to come back here. So that might be something that I do in my little tidying up portion that I do off camera. And then as you can see, just copious amounts of buffalo grass. I don't know what I would do without this piece. It's going to be featuring quite heavily in the Siberian tiger habitat as well, but love it, can't live without it. But then I go and add some brambles in. I don't usually use these, but again, I like the different tones of greens. You know, like you've got these creosote bushes, which are sort of like on the darker side, and then you've got the buffalo grass, which is a bit more lighter and a bit more vibrant, and then this bramble, which just offers a different color and texture entirely. So again, I say it so much, but keep playing with your colors and your textures, because it really does help just sell the whole picture that you're trying to set as a whole. Speaking of which, I noticed that there wasn't much verticality going on. You've got this tall aviary structure going on, but nothing really utilizing that upward space. So I was going to place a tree here, but I didn't in the end. I think I opted for going for some like climbing structures in the end, just because I wanted the Pallas cats to actually have something to climb on as well. I assume that they're quite jumpy, climby creatures in real life, actual words there. But in the end, I just opt with going for like a tree on this left hand side here, this cork tree, and then where I've got the climbing structures here on the middle along one of these, see here, I end up placing some climbing structures. I end up just placing a lot of foliage underneath that so that it sort of like bridges the gap between the floor and the platform, and it just, even though you haven't got any dramatic verticality going on, it helps close up some of those spaces. And here I start working on the viewing gallery for the Pallas cat. It's not anything too special to begin with. I'm just sort of like establishing where or how the glass is going to fit in here, because I didn't want to use the barrier pieces, because I think they're very murky, it seems, in comparison to these ones that are in the construction tab. So really wanted to use these, so that is what I'm going to be doing. And then yeah, I end up going back to this later on because it just looked a bit barren, so I end up copying the cover from the sand cat over to this area, because the window was remarkably the same size. It wasn't planned, it just happened to be that way. I like these happy little coincidences that seem to work their way into the project. But beams, marquee beams, and all that sort of typical usage of pieces for me are what are going to be featuring in this window here. I end up just going for like dark colors as well. I end up using some the wood I end up using from the canopy shelter bits a little bit later on are like a different contrast to this, so I think they work quite well next to these windows in the end. But like I say, we'll come back to this a little bit later on when I sort of come to the realization I needed something sheltering the window. I'm just working on the height of the window as well. Scale is very much something that's in the back of my mind at the whole time while I'm building this place. So, but the problem that I end up facing with myself is that whenever I'm taking out an area of mesh like this for placing like a window, or on the other side when I'm placing the indoor area for the Pallas cat, it does then mean that I have to redo the mesh above it to meet where it falls down to on Goron's roof. And a little bit frustrating, but at the same time I think it's just like dedication, you know. I'm in too deep at this point, I can't back out now. Now, something I did notice that as you was coming up the hill from the caracal and the Bengal tigers towards this mini plaza type thing we got going on, there's like a gap in between these two trees, and I thought, you know what, that's a nice little spot that I could put a platform that they can get up to. I use this ladder that I made absolutely ages ago. It's like bamboo and it's tied together with loads of rope. Haven't used this in God knows how long, so I thought, hey, do you know what? Good chance to reuse some of my old blueprints. So here we are doing it now. And then I end up putting a skittle feeder up on top of this as well, just to entice them to actually climb up here. And again, hopefully, as you're coming up around the corner, you will get a really cool view of the Pallas cat using this platform. But again, I'll have to spend some more time watching the Pallas cats to actually know whether it's something that they do use actively. These logs as well, I've made it my quest at this point to put at least one log in every single habitat that we've got in this sanctuary. So I think we've only got two more, or one more actually, because I think I've already placed the one inside the Siberian tiger habitat. So one more to go, and then the quest is complete. Now I noticed as I was going around, once the foliage and stuff was in place on this far side of the Pallas cat habitat, that in between all of the faux rocks I've been placing down, it's quite a bit gappy here. So here I'm just going through with like the actual rocks afterward and just sort of filling in the gaps here and there, just so that it looks a bit more together and a bit more complete before we move on to this, which is going to be the indoor portion. Not going to be decorated at all. It's literally just going to be here for hiding the keeper entrance to the habitat and giving the Pallas cat some indoor shelter as well. So I get the basic shape of the building that I want, and then end up sort of working with some of the colour just so that it's fitting with the area. Obviously this purple isn't something that we're going to be sticking with, but here I know ahead of time that I'm going to have to be turning these mesh pieces into null and then changing them. So what I'm doing is I'm quickly just getting one panel in per section of the fence, just so that I know roughly where I'm having to work with in terms of fixing the mesh afterward. I think if I hadn't done that afterward, it would have created quite a few headaches. So I'm glad on this occasion that my brain decided to actually do something and think this far ahead in terms of damage limitation, as it were. But then we start working on a small hole entrance as well. Like I say, I'm using P.A.W.S, so it means that they can actually fit through this gap, obviously, whereas by default they probably wouldn't have been able to, because if you don't know how traversable area works in this game by this point, it's done based on if an animal can't rotate on its standing point 360 degrees, then an animal will just simply won't go to that area. So if an animal can't get into this, sort of stand in the doorway of this hole and turn around 360 degrees, they won't go through it, even if their hitbox from side to side, like shoulder to shoulder, is nowhere near as big as the hole here. But P.A.W.S allows me to sort of fix that problem. I'm going to say it is a problem because I think it is a problem, but yeah, it's just going to make things look a little bit nicer having this smaller hole rather than this huge gaping one in the door here. The roof was a little bit finicky here because obviously where I had the 1 meter Ave pieces, or 1 meter incline pieces there, I had to sort of try and work around it best that I could, but I think for the most part it's worked out quite well. You know, combination of roof pieces have allowed me to just cover this up quite nicely. The only thing that does slightly bother me is that I still feel like this building's a little bit too tall, but at the end of the day, I think the side here where the Pallas cat gets in is just not going to be it's not going to be working correctly if I end up lowering this building anymore. So for now, I'm just going to have to try and find something to help with this, but I'm just trying to sort of lower it down as much as I humanly can on this side without affecting the window, and then I'll just go and delete all the insides. Again, not going to be heavily detailed on the interiors, very few interiors in this whole project, so I'm trying to keep the piece count where it's needed, and I think on this occasion, I think the habitats and the remaining habitats are where my remaining FPS are going to have to be spent. But once I've done with the whole building, I'm going around and adding some trim. So here I've got some beam pieces that I'm turning into a lighter colour wood, and I end up putting them all the way around just to break up the monotony of the aquatic plank pieces. And then I go and add some windows, a canopy. I end up just like covering this bit here with like a lot of overgrown foliage. Again, this is basically the edge of the sanctuary, as it were. Behind this you've got the cougar habitat, and into the right where this wooden barrier is that goes into the staff area. So this is an edge of the sanctuary. But the finishing touches are basically being put in here. We've got the enrichment pieces that the Pallas cat are going to be needing, some water and stuff like that. And then obviously, let's not forget that we have to finish the mesh above the house that we've just built as well. Very important step, otherwise it would have just completely driven me out the wall. And then it means we can go back round to the front of the habitat where the viewing gallery is. And then this is what I was talking about. So I've basically ripped this from the sandcat area. It's literally the perfect size for this window. I don't know how I've managed to do this, but yeah, that's going to be going in there. And then again, just fixing the mesh above this window. And then just more details. You know, we've obviously got our signs that we've made, so we go and grab those and put them in this little plaza area, just so that that's all cohesive and kept together. We've got the non-functional signage, as it were, and then as well we've got the ones that we've made. This has still got the Bengal tiger on, obviously, but I need to redo the sign so that actually shows the Pallas cat. They've all got names, don't worry, you'll be able to find out all of their names very, very soon. And that is going to draw us to the end of this episode. I'd like to thank you for watching. It's been an absolute blast to build this, even though the mesh has been a nightmare. I'm just going to leave you now with some cinematics of the habitat itself and the Pallas cats using the habitat as well. But thank you so much for watching. Peace out. I love you all. And catch you for the Siberian tiger habitat next time.